With the recent re-release of Skyrim for the 38th time over the past 10 years, we once again have a surge in hype for the Elder Scrolls 6. Wandering through the throat of the world with the Anniversary Edition, I find myself daydreaming about what Test 6 could be like after what will probably be 14 to 15 plus years of no new Elder Scrolls. 14 to 15 years is more than 2 console upgrades, and think about all of the GPUs that come out in a time frame like that. But setting aside the more obvious improvements that we can expect, such as graphics, what do we want Test 6 to be like? I would imagine that most of us want it to still retain that feeling of what an Elder Scrolls game is supposed to feel like. First-person perspective with the option to go into third, big open beautiful world, the ability to go wherever and whenever you want, unless you're in prison of course, lots of character development freedom, all the faction stuff, crafting, modding potential, and so on. So to do this, Bethesda has to, of course, keep the core of Test 6 the same as the core of, I would say, the previous 3 Test games, even though they all do differ from each other in various ways. So keeping that in mind, what are some things that we would want changed, improved, or even added to Test 6 that would allow it to still retain that feeling of being a true Elder Scrolls game? And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. For more RPG content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you're interested, I'll leave links to a vocal rendition of the Dragonborn Comes that I recently did, and the legend yet grows. I'll leave those links in the pinned comment, video description, and the top right of the video. I appreciate you guys. Let's jump right in. I just want to point out quickly that I already know that there are mods out there for many of these things. You don't gotta tell me. Keep in mind that many players don't use mods. Not all mods are good, although many are, or they're limited in what they can do. And also there's a ton of console players who don't even know what mods are. I'm very excited for the modding potential of Test 6, but I also think Bethesda should have a higher standard for their vanilla game. Skyblivion hype, anyone? Number 1. Test 6 needs an arena. Enough said. Number 2. Combat upgrade. If you're like me, you love the Elder Scrolls combat. You also realize that you probably can't easily win debates over gamers who don't like the combat. Despite the combat overall being incredibly fun in my opinion, let's all admit that it could certainly be better, and I think 15 years is enough time to show us some big improvements. General combat improvements are to be expected with Test 6, such as things being smoother and animations being better. But how about adding some mechanics that make the combat a little more engaging? First thing that comes to mind is having damage be relative to different body parts. Believe it or not, there is no headshot damage in Skyrim. You can put a well-placed arrow through the forehead of an opponent, and that same arrow through your opponent's pinky toe will result in the same damage number. At the very least, Test 6 could allow us to get a little extra headshot damage, and this would encourage players to go for those riskier shots, even though most of us probably already do, and it would reward those shots. I think it would also be reasonable to ask for torso damage to be a thing. So damage to the head could be multiplied damage. Torso damage could even be the base damage. And then damage to any other body part could be reduced damage. On the same topic, why not have shooting an enemy in the leg cause some movement restrictions? There's a real lot that Bethesda could do with this, and I think it would add tremendously to Test 6's combat system. Of course, it all has to be balanced, but I mean, come on, we can already get times 30 sneak damage in Skyrim. If we wanted to get even more in-depth, which I do think Bethesda is capable of, they could make it so that when you're wearing armor, that armor bonus only applies to body parts that are actually protected by the armor. Of course, some players don't want to always feel like they have to wear armor that covers every inch of their body. So to be fair to those players, this system could allow pieces with less surface area, so to say, come with a slight increase in movement speed, or perhaps attack speed. Another thing that Bethesda could add, and this one is probably a little bit more divisive, are some basic combat maneuvers such as kicking. I don't want anything crazy here because if we get too crazy in this department, the combat will lose its Elder Scrolls combat feel. But just simply being able to lift a leg and kick back an opponent that's in your face, or maybe even shove them, I think would be nice. These maneuvers should not be crazy powerful, just a little something to add to our arsenal. It doesn't make much sense to be a renowned warrior who can't perform some basic martial arts maneuvers. Number 3. Follower Backstories. I personally don't think that the Elder Scrolls games should try to be like BioWare games, or even Larian Studios games, where a huge portion of their games seem to be focused on companionship. That works great with those games, but Elder Scrolls is different and it should offer a different experience. But I do still think that Bethesda could do a bit more with some of the NPC backstories, specifically those that we can have as followers. The ones that I've met in Skyrim seem to be more akin to necromancy summons than actual emotional beings with lives of their own. There really doesn't seem to be much depth to them, which in turn makes it really hard to truly care about them or even having them around. Give us some deep companion-specific quests. Let us explore their lives in this fantastic world and learn more about their own personal journey. Have followers react to our actions, giving us the feeling that they actually have personalities and their own set of morals. Let us truly form a connection to some of the NPCs in this world. I think improving this aspect of the game could go a very long way for the success, replayability, and of course longevity of the Elder Scrolls 6. Number 4. Factions. Joining factions and going through the faction quest lines is no doubt one of the highlights of the Elder Scrolls games, and I'm sure it will be the same for Test 6. The Dark Brotherhood, the Companions, Thieves Guild, Dawnguard, Imperials, Stormcloaks, and so on. As fun as it is to join these factions and explore their content, there's a lot of really stupid stuff that comes with it that just doesn't make much sense that Test 6 could vastly improve. First example is that you can be the leader of nearly all of the factions at the same time. You can be the leader of the Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild, and in your free time be the leader of the Mages Guild, the Bloodsucker Haters, and the Imperial Legion. But you cannot be Imperial Legion and Stormcloaks, of course. As fun as this can be, I feel like your actions and what you allow your Skyrim life to become with the factions should have more of an effect on the other factions. That doesn't mean that Bethesda needs to take away our ability to join all of the factions, or at least most of the factions, because that does seem to be core to the Elder Scrolls games. But here's a couple examples of things that they could do to make it make more sense and be more immersive. Bethesda could implement a system where if you become the leader of one faction, it alters the quest lines of a few of the others, therefore not allowing you to be the true leader of 5 factions at one time. You would still have access to most of the content and maybe even perhaps still be able to lead more than just one at a time, but things would change a little. Test 6 could also give us the option to step down and give up our leadership of some of the factions, or even just give up a position of power if we're not the actual leader. This would then open up the option to take leadership positions in some of the other factions if you do their quest lines. So we're not really taking away content from players, just making it make more sense. Another thing I would like to see with the factions is your faction choice having more of an effect on just the regular world around you. I remember doing an assassination mission for the Dark Brotherhood where I had to become the head chef for the Emperor and poison him. Well, I served him his food, in this case his imposter, while wearing almost full Dark Brotherhood attire with a chef's hat on top. It makes absolutely no sense. If you're a member of the Companions and you want to wear that proudly, that should have more of an effect on those around you. If you're trying to join multiple factions, you shouldn't be able to wear companion armor into the Thieves Guild hideout. Bethesda could even possibly think about having some optional special side faction quests, and optional is the key word here, that have heavy implications on the other factions. Maybe the Companions want you to put an end to a Dark Brotherhood hideout, or maybe the Dark Brotherhood gives you a contract to assassinate someone from the Companions, and if you're caught, you'll lose access to that faction, if you choose to take on this special side quest, of course. I think Bethesda has a big opportunity to improve the faction system with the Elder Scrolls 6. Number 5. Narrative Agency. And this in many ways falls into line with what we just talked about with the factions. I just want to point that out. There's no denying that Skyrim excels in player agency in several different categories. You can build whatever type of character you want. You can join whatever faction. You can interact with many of the game's plot items, do quests in whatever order you feel necessary. But where the Elder Scrolls seems to fall a little short in is true narrative agency. When speaking on Skyrim specifically, it seems like the vast majority of quests are rather linear and lacking in any true consequence. There's very few branching dialogue trees to affect a conversation, and dialogue doesn't typically have much of an effect on an NPC's opinion of you. The game can sometimes give off the vibe of having narrative agency because you have the option of stopping one quest and doing another one at any time. But this to me is more so an illusion of narrative agency and not true narrative agency. You're not really changing much by stopping a Dark Brotherhood quest and then going to work on the main quest or another faction quest. My hopes for Test 6 is that we'll get a little bit more in this department, some more branching dialogues, maybe 2 or 3 different outcomes for many of the quest lines. There is a little bit of this in Skyrim, such as when we get to choose to join the Imperials or the Stormcloaks, which essentially makes the services of the side you didn't join become unavailable until the conflict is resolved. But there's really not much like this in the game. Bethesda could even leave the main storyline quest mostly linear, for canon purposes. I wouldn't complain too much about that, even though it would be cool to have a multi-dimensional main story quest line. But there's so much outside of just the main quest that us players should have the opportunity to change the outcome of. Outside of quests themselves, how cool would it be to actually be able to wipe out another faction off the map, or at the very least be allowed to kill their leadership? Too many NPCs in Skyrim can't be killed at all, and this takes away a lot of player agency in terms of affecting the narrative world around us. I would prefer to have the freedom of being able to actually kill an innkeeper, knowing that I will have to deal with the consequences. It also just doesn't make much sense that you can kill everyone else in the tavern, but the innkeeper is for some reason invulnerable. Give us players the choice to truly affect things, even if that means that we are cutting ourselves off from content such as quest lines or perhaps services with the innkeeper. Number 6. Fishing. Skyrim's Anniversary Edition is perhaps the worst fishing system I have seen in a game to date. Now, I'm not bashing whoever the original modder is that made this mod before Bethesda took it. Most modders are doing God's work and they're doing it for free. I greatly respect that. But the fishing system that came with the Anniversary Edition, meaning backed by Bethesda and released by the highly successful mighty Bethesda, is extremely underwhelming. For those of you who have not tried it yet, this is how it works. You can only cast a line out in very specific locations, so you can't fish anywhere on a lake or river, only on very specific points represented by a bucket in a fishing camp. These fishing camps are scattered throughout the world in a very immersion-breaking manner. Once you stand on the specific point, you can then cast, but you don't cast, the game does it for you, and then the game freezes you in place. You literally can't move at all. So no looking around and enjoying the environment around you. Then when your line wiggles, you literally press E one time. That's it. That is fishing in Skyrim. A game backed by a huge gaming company with likely unbelievable profit margins. And this is what they're giving us. Put some damn time into it and make it good, Bethesda. Fishing is something that I think could be truly enjoyable in an Elder Scrolls game. And I think Test 6 should absolutely design a fishing system from the ground up and allow us players to travel the world and try to catch some super rare fish to either eat, sell, or maybe even mount in your own house. The spectacular ambience and immersion of the Elder Scrolls is set up perfectly for this. And one more thing. Don't let us catch armor sets and weapons while fishing. I am beyond confused why that is even a thing. Number 7. Game difficulty. I think most can agree that the Elder Scrolls games are not known for difficulty. Skyrim specifically, as many things became more streamlined than when compared to Oblivion and Morrowind, and that of course goes for the combat. Sure, you can make it harder, and not everything's easy. I don't mean it to come across like that. You can play on Legendary and all the other difficulties, but generally speaking, the Elder Scrolls games are meant to appeal to a decently wide audience, and a very wide audience when speaking on Skyrim. I'm assuming that Test 6 will follow Skyrim in this regards, and it's a given that it will offer different difficulty settings, but I think they should take it a bit further this time. One way that they could do this without really changing the core of the game's combat is by offering an optional true native survival mode. The Anniversary Edition came with a survival mode, and I am enjoying it, but it's certainly not an amazing system, and it's pretty clear that it's an add-on. Having a true, fully fleshed out survival mode would allow Bethesda to add many different survival aspects to the game, making it more difficult without necessarily having to create Dark Souls type bosses. A true survival mode would naturally make the game more difficult, as players would have to deal with more potential severe negative conditions, and combat itself would also create more of these negative status effects on your character. Wounds that have to be healed with specific medicinal tools and items, and if you don't have those items on you, you have to go all the way back to town. Because of this, many players will decide to push on in a dungeon or wherever they are with their injuries, and the game becomes more difficult without Bethesda even having to change anything in the base game. Also, just having the knowledge that enemies have the potential to deal long-lasting negative effects to your character makes the combat more engaging and difficult, because you then care much more about avoiding damage by blocking, dodging, having good positioning, etc. Doing mindless hack and slash will become something that is truly penalizing in a well fleshed out survival mode. On this same subject, I think most of us could agree that regardless of the challenge levels that you prefer with your games, the enemy AI could use some overall improvements from Oblivion and Skyrim. Smarter and more versatile AI would naturally make the game a bit more difficult and certainly more engaging. In my opinion, fighting dragons in Skyrim eventually starts to become more of a nuisance than an excitement. And why? Well, because most of the dragons do the same exact stuff. Number 8. Less bugs and glitches. It's really sad to say that a Bethesda game without bugs and glitches would not even feel like a Bethesda game. It's obviously humorous to talk about that, and many bugs and glitches are pretty damn funny in their games. But really, I'm kind of in shock that I still come across so many bugs in Skyrim 10 years after its release. I just bought the new and improved Anniversary Edition, so why does it take me 5 clicks to see the innkeeper's food menu? Some of it is funny, like I said, but I feel like we're now giving Bethesda a pass on this stuff. They're not a small, poor indie company. They need to be held to higher standards. Spend the extra time to fix the bugs, and for God's sake, there better not still be obvious bugs 10 years after the Test 6 release, especially if they plan on re-releasing it over and over for money like Skyrim did. Number 9, and I hope this one is a given for Test 6. We need to have a better inventory system. It's extremely frustrating navigating the current inventory menu, and it can also be really hard to find items that you're looking for. This is one of the most popular mods for Skyrim, I know, as it should be, but it should not need to be a mod for Test 6. Just get it right. Now, I understand that Skyrim was more so designed for consoles than PC, and obviously that is changing over the years. But Bethesda, like I said, is a huge company. They have the resources to give us like a PC version of the inventory, and they didn't. Well, we had to rely on mods, so thank you to the modding community, but I still think that Bethesda should be held responsible for stuff like this, especially when they keep re-releasing the game. And last but not least, number 10, spell creation. I want Test 6 to bring back spell creation like we had in Oblivion. I had to do some reading on this subject because I'm not a huge magic user myself, but it is clear that the magic system in Oblivion was much more robust and versatile spell-wise than Skyrim is. I can still see the many improvements to casting that Skyrim made when compared to Oblivion, and I think I personally prefer how Skyrim has you equip magic in your hands. It feels more exciting, but that's just me. But Oblivion had a lot of spell customization, and customization is a core part of RPGs. In Oblivion, and I think the games before, when a player completed the initiation quest for the Mages Guild, they could then create their own spells and fine-tune the spell's behavior, ranging from how long the spell lasts to the damage that it deals. This may sound a little complex, and I get that Skyrim was streamlined a little bit, but what Bethesda could potentially do is still offer this spell customization once again, but not make it mandatory to be a powerful magic user. And that'll be it for today's video. Thank you guys so much. For those of you that made it the full 19 plus minutes up to this point, let me know below in the comments if you're one of those people. I really appreciate that. It's a huge help to videos. success. Like I said before, I'll leave a link to my Dragonborn Comes vocal rendition below in the pinned comment, top right of the video, and also the video description. And please let me know your thoughts on everything that I talked about in this video. It's still early enough to hopefully get to Bethesda and maybe have them hear some of the things that we want with the Elder Scrolls 6. Whether or not they'll listen, well, that's another case, but we can certainly try. Thanks again, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.